Good evening, folks, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. This is the Thursday night edition. I'm Al Huey, your host, along with my partner, Robert Eierman, and we are privileged again to have the director for the Indian Wells...
General Manager.
Please forgive me. The General Manager for the Indian Wells Valley Water District, Mr. Don Zdeba. Thanks for being with us, Don.
Thank you for having me back.
Again, yes.
Thank you for having me back.
And we will be talking about water, and this is a very contentious issue, and I just want to say that here on Ridgecrest Talk Thursday evening edition, we're hard on the issues, but soft on the people.
Right. Otherwise, Don, when this is like your fourth time back,
I think I'm your most popular guest.
You would have said adios.
Yeah,
I've had enough of you guys. Well, the reason we wanted to have you on at the last board meeting, and it had been actually publicized before that, the governor came down with new conservation requirements.
Right.
And as I recall, the governor wanted the watering to be every other day as far as lawns and plants and that type of thing. But there was a stipulation there, and you're going to tell us about it right now.
Okay. It wasn't so much that the governor wanted to water landscaping every other day. What he proposed and what he presented in his executive order April 1st was a statewide 25% reduction. The State Water Board took that and elaborated on it, and they added several requirements, several restrictions. One of those was that if your district did not currently limit the number of days that you could water specifically, then you would be required to water only 2 days a week. Now, the district's ordinance 93, which is in effect, or has been in effect and was in effect last year, just has a limit on the hours that you can water. And that was between the hours of 8 o'clock in the evening and 8 o'clock in the morning. But you could water 7 days a week. So unless that was changed, the state would kick us back to 2 days a week. And we were very concerned that local landscaping could not survive on 2 day a week irrigation. So what was proposed at the board meeting that you attended was an emergency conservation ordinance, number 97. We went back and forth on how we could do this. The original proposal was if your address was even, you could water on even days. If your address was ended in an odd number, you watered on odd days. And that everybody could water when there was a 31st of the month. When that got out to our customers, we had several calls from people that said, how am I going to make that work with my timer? Because when that 31st day comes on, I'm going to have to change my timer, or I could be on vacation and my timer doesn't change.
Yes.
So we took that feedback and decided what to do what many other districts are currently doing, and that's if your address ends in an even number, you can water on set days. If it ends on an odd day, set days. And what we decided on or settled on was if your address ends in an even number, you can water on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. If it's an odd number, you can water on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and then no watering on Monday. So that's in the ordinance, and that ordinance actually took effect April 13th when the board voted on it.
Right.
Oh, so this took effect immediately.
The ordinance took effect immediately, but we're not enforcing it immediately because we haven't got the word out, and that's one reason I wanted to come on here too, is try and get word out to your viewers. We have a mailer set to go out, and I think it's going to go out April 1st to the post office. That'll have information.
You mean May 1st?
I'm sorry, May 1st. I've got April on my mind.
Yeah.
It will go out May 1st, and there will be information about this Ordinance 97, the restrictions, and there will also be information on the Cash for Grass program that we're implementing. So
Are people still eligible to file for that or be considered?
Absolutely. We've had a lot of inquiries because word has filtered out, obviously, that we're going to have this program. The details of it, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So we have $10,000 right now, which is not much. It's a little seed money to start this program. And then we've budgeted $50,000 for the next fiscal year beginning July 1st. We've also applied for a grant through the Inyo Mono IRWIMP for matching funds, another $50,000. Just so you know, the way the program will work, we've set a deadline for people to submit their applications. And when those applications come in, we'll essentially do a lottery and just pick at random
Okay.
until the money's expended. It's $2,000, a dollar a square foot, up to 2,000 square feet. It has to be living turf. In other words, if your turf is already dead, it doesn't count. So it has to be living turf,
Okay.
and you have to replace it with desert-appropriate landscaping, rocks, desert. We've got a list of
AstroTurf.
something like that. Just this last week, we put on our website a extensive database on desert plants, and it's quite a good tool. If you go to our website, you'll see it near the top, and it'll list trees, shrubs, desert grasses. Just pick a category, and it'll show you pictures of what it looks like, explain the amount of water it needs, that sort of thing. So it's a good resource for
Yeah,
our
sounds
local
like
residents. So that program will be started. Again, the $10,000 is seed money, and it's probably going to be gone pretty quick. But it seems like we're going to get a good response to this, so we'll likely try to
Now, at
expand
that board
it.
meeting, we were discussing the different levels, and they rated districts at different percentages based on the water usage from September of 2014, correct?
Correct. Initially, as I said, the governor initially wanted a 25% statewide reduction. They got feedback from a lot of water districts. I had sent an email as well that kind of opposed this broad brush type of approach because, as you gentlemen all know, California is very diverse geographically, climate,
Yes.
and one size doesn't necessarily fit all. So the water board did consider the feedback they got, and just this last weekend they issued a revised restrictions for the water 411 water districts that report to them. And instead of having 4 tiers, they now have 9 tiers of restrictions. I had sent feedback for the water district, and apparently didn't do a very good job because ours went from 35% to 36%. So I mean, I'd been better off not writing them.
And there's no way we're going to, which was discussed at the meeting, there's impossible almost for us to attain 35%.
There was discussion at the board meeting and concern about landscaping, turf dying, things like that. But unless we do this 3-day a week, I don't see how we're going to even come close to 35%. Now, I did send more feedback. I sent a 6-page letter to the water board on Tuesday, trying to explain again. We have some unique circumstances in almost every district.
We're going to have to go to break.
Okay.
Keep that thought, though.
I will.
The letter.
All right.
And we'll be right back talking with Mr. Zdeba about water.
And welcome back to segment 2 of the Thursday evening Ridgecrest Talk here on KZGN-TV. I'm Robert Eierman, along with my partner, Al Huey, and we're again pleased to have as our guest Mr. Don Zdeba, the General Manager of the Water District. And you were mentioning to us about a 6-page letter that you wrote.
Okay, and let me go back. The original conservation standards that were issued by the state, again, were 4 different levels, 4 tiers, if you will. And they were based on the September 2014 residential gallons per capita per day that were reported by all 411 agencies that report to the state.
Now, real quick, how did we determine that? Did we determine how much water was used divided by the number of citizens, or how?
Okay, starting last summer when the drought began, all water districts were required to report to the state how much water they pumped in total, and then a residential gallons per capita per day. So what we...
Yeah, but how do you determine that?
I was going to... Okay, what we break down, our district, I started when I came on something called a key performance measure, and one of those is our water production. And we break it down by residential, multi-residential, commercial, and public use. So every month we have those numbers. So what the state's looking for is your residential and multi-residential. You pull that
could
out
have
of your...
residential where there's 1 person living there.
True, true.
And another one where there's 7.
True. But we take our the amount of water that we produced based on our accounts to the residential, multi-residential, that total, take that out of our total production. The state has a number in their database of 31,120 residents. So we take the residential water use, the multi-residential water use, that total, divide by the 31,120, and then divide by the number of days in the month, and that gives you your residential gallons per capita per day.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that number in September 2014 was originally used as the baseline target, and based on that, we were put into the tier of 35%. Based on the feedback the Water Board got, they looked at it and divided into 9 tiers, and they decided to take more than 1 month. They decided to look at July, August, and September, the 3 hottest months.
We were killed.
So yeah, we didn't come out very well. But the number that they actually put in their table for Indian Wells Valley Water District was, I think, 263 gallons per capita per day. That number is incorrect, and I pointed out in the letter that I wrote, I provided them with the data. There was some mix-up in how this was reported initially. I was reporting that our residential percentage was 92%. That was the number of accounts, not the percentage of water.
Oh.
So I think the number they used, I know the number they used was wrong. I sent them the correct number. We were actually around 234, about 30 gallons per capita per day less. Still puts us in tier 9. But in the letter that I wrote, I did point out that we're in a way unique in that we rely almost primarily on evaporative cooling. And we've talked before in previous
Yes.
about the effect of evaporative cooling. I got more data. There's a study done by the University of Arizona on coolers, and they point out somewhere around 25.8% of household water used in the house is used for cooling. And that can equate to, depending on your size of cooler, the air movement, and relative humidity, a single cooler in a day can use from 35 to 100 gallons of water. So if you factor that in to our gallons per capita per day residential, it's pretty significant. And that's something that, I'm not going to say it's unique to us, but it's unique to the desert environment. If you
Right.
go along the coast, you don't find evaporative coolers, or Southern
Not a one.
California, you don't find evaporative coolers. So I pointed that out to him. I also pointed out that we do have customers that have large parcels that have board horses, that board animals. Those animals and horses require water. I don't know if they factor that sort of thing in. So
Unique to us, it reminds me of a trip my parents made out here one summer. And my dad was in the utility room and we have a sink there, and he turned the cold water knob to wash his hands, and he came back and he says, I think you got this pipe wrong. He says, both of those are hot water.
Yeah.
we've heard
No,
that before.
Dad.
Yeah, we've heard complaints about that. But now the State Water Board, in my opinion, has a very difficult task. They're trying to address this as quick as they can. Again, you've got a diverse geographical state, diverse climates, trying to make a one-size-fits-all. It's not easy. And as I said, you've got 411 districts, and they all probably have some unique circumstances that would factor into their water conservation standards. So,
What about our unique situation of not being dependent or being somewhat independent of the current drought situation, since we use groundwater and we know that doesn't get replenished very much by...
Right. I pointed that out in the letter as well, and that's one point that some of these water districts in Sacramento that I was mentioning during the break they're making that as well, is that they're not dependent on the surface water or state or federal water projects as much. So, and those are the ones that are suffering more because, as you probably heard, there's virtually zero allocation from those projects. So, that's another factor that makes us a little bit unique. The other thing I think that I pointed out is I feel like our customers of the water district are being burdened more than probably they should have to share. Since 2009, we've seen our customers cut back 20% already.
Yes.
So on top of that 20%, we're now being asked to cut into 36%. So if you want to just look at in terms of our production back,
Another 36 or
Another-
16%?
another 36.
No,
6%.
another 36.
yes, yes.
Wow.
So that makes 56%.
So what the state will be looking at is our water use beginning in June through November compared to 2013. And just so you do give you a sense of scale, in 2013, the water district produced a little over 7,500 acre-feet of water. So if we look at another 36% cut, we're down to about 4,800 produced. That's a significant cut.
Yes.
And again, the water district customers are being asked to bear that. And I want to mention, but I'm not intending to throw anybody under the bus necessarily, but private well owners, the large commercial ag, they are not feeling any pain, if you will.
Right.
Well,
Central
we'll
Valley-
talk about that when we come back.
Central
after
Valley
the break.
farmers, well, the point I was trying to make, Central Valley farmers are relying on state water. The allocations
yes,
are zero.
right.
Here, they get all the groundwater they want.
Another break is coming up, so we're going to have to hold that thought.
Sure.
We'll be back in just a little bit.
Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Al Huey again, along with my co-host or partner, Robert Eierman. We're here with Don Zdeba from the Water District, and you were talking about the differences that in our geographic area compared to Sacramento or other parts, and how we're so dependent upon water for cooling.
Right.
And now with the new restrictions coming down, we'd almost attained the 20%, which we'd been mandated to do. And I thought it was only going to be 16% more, but no, it's a whole 36% more, which means over a 50% reduction from water usage in 2013.
This is
2009.
2009,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
This is an entirely different initiative. The initial 20% cut was a target that Governor Schwarzenegger established back in 2010. And it was an initiative to get all water districts to cut 20% by the year 2020. As I mentioned, our customers already achieved the 20% well ahead of the year 2020. So this 36% is on top of that. And that's a point some of the other water districts are trying to make, is they've been doing conservation for several years, and some other districts haven't. So the ones that have already been doing conservation are
Get penalized worse.
being penalized for the actions they've already taken. And I think that's a valid point.
I do
How
too.
the State Water Board responds to that remains to be seen. They're going to be considering this May 5th. And whatever they decide would take effect June 1st. And again, this would be tracked through November.
And you were mentioning, let me just come back to it, to help you come back to, you were also mentioning that when this was done, the governor specifically exempted agriculture. And
There are some provisions in his executive order for agriculture.
oh, really? Okay. I thought it was
And-
exempted.
Well, in terms of the reductions, but they do have to, right now, large commercial ag does have to file, I don't know the exact term, sort of a water management report. And what the executive order did April 1st was extend that requirement to farms that are now between 10,000 and 25,000 acres. So before that, it was just the larger commercial farms that had to have for lack of a better word, I'll call it a water management plan.
Okay.
Now, these smaller farms between 10,000 and 25,000 acres have to file a similar plan by, I believe it's July of 2016.
Okay. But we
So
don't
there
have
is
anything that
accountability.
large here.
No, so there's accountability in a sense for agriculture, but they're not impacted by the 25% statewide cut, if you will.
Right, nor here in this valley do they have any share in the 36% reduction.
That's correct.
And because of the cost of water, we were talking the other day that some farmers are finding it more profitable to stop farming and sell their water.
That's really common among the rice farmers, is what I've been reading. They can sell their water for $400 or more an acre foot. I think the break-even price is somewhere around $400 an acre foot. If they can sell for more than that, they're better off just fallowing their land and selling their water.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's occurring as we speak.
So we hope to hear back from the state on this new mandate. You said June 1st?
They're considering it May 5th, and it would go into effect June 1st. And I suspect, I'm not looking that our target is going to be reduced. So that was kind of the urgency to getting this ordinance in as soon as possible. Because if we don't act now, as you know, that we're starting to enter, although we've in a recent cool spell, but
Yes.
we're starting to get into our warmer season, and that's the opportunity to start working towards this conservation standard.
And you had mentioned you had been following or something about Palm Springs not wanting to comply with these cuts because it would just
Well, it would
devastate
It would
that-
devastate them economically.
Yeah.
And
because
they're
they
all-
have, what, 100 and some golf courses?
133 of the state's 460-some golf courses are in Palm Springs. Certainly, they are a tourist community,
Right.
and they also only use groundwater. So it should be an interesting situation when literally their livelihood depends on lush green golf courses and lush green surround the hotels and the et ceteras, et ceteras. And I just can't see them folding up their tent and saying, okay, you know, we're going to become the brown capital of the world.
Right. I do believe some of those golf courses use recycled water. I don't know. I know several of them use groundwater, but I do believe there's some that use recycled water. But that's something that's going to have to be looked at more and more, I think, if we're going to continue to have the number of lush green golf courses in this state.
Yes, yeah, I mean, and I was just, I only mentioned it because I was kind of somewhat hoping that they would lead a parade that would wind up saving us, is all I'm thinking.
They certainly have more resources available to them than we do here.
That's true. More political clout, too, possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you know, just as you mentioned, you know, the one-size-fits-all approach just isn't realistic. It's not fair. It's not reasonable. And I'm sure that we're not the only community feeling, you know, very put upon by this. And I also appreciate the fact that the residential users are feeling extra put upon. You know, we certainly have had a lot of conversation over the last 6 months relative to water, and I know that there's people out there who feel that, you know, the farmers are using too much, and so now we have an additional water crisis, and our farmers aren't going to be impacted. I mean, other than any moral obligation that they might feel,
Sure.
but there's no requirement on them. So it's a very difficult situation.
It is a difficult situation, and yesterday at the China Lake Alliance luncheon that you both attended, I think I had probably at least a dozen people approach me and, you know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to reduce to 36%? And that's a good question. It's an
Yeah.
excellent question, and all I can say is, you know, we have to give it a try. The 3-day-a-week watering, my sense is we should be able to see 20-25%. We're hopeful our customers understand. I think by and large most of them do. I mean, this isn't something that we are wanting necessarily to do, but it's being mandated, and I think the state is, you know, last year Governor Brown wanted 20% voluntary.
We're going to have to pick that up on part 2 of our interview with Mr. Zdeba. So stay tuned or tune in for the next program where we'll continue the discussion. Have a good evening.